I found my water bottle. There it is. Good glory. So, we've been talking about fearless generosity in various different ways. This past week we talked about fearless sowing and the need to overcome our fears of rejection in order to share our faith boldly with others. And this past week we were challenged to bring a friend with you to worship, to invite them to worship or to a church event. Still have time to do that. I see that some people have. So thanks to those who have been bold enough to invite someone. And then this week we're talking about fearless generosity and overcoming the fears that get in our way of being financially generous. So one of the ways that we can appreciate the power of fearless financial generosity is hearing about how it has impacted others. We've already heard from John about how fearless generosity impacted him, what he received from his grandfather, and what he himself, on his own generosity, how that impacted him as well in a positive way. So I'm going to share with you two stories about others' financial generosity towards me and how that impacted my life. So 3 people came to mind when I thought of fearless financial generosity. And those 2 people who first came to mind were my grandparents. Now my family initially, when I was born, lived in an apartment, and then shortly after, before I was even a year old, we moved into a condo. And my family rented the condo. And my mother, as I've told some of you, she had a business in the home. She ran a child care. And she really wanted to own her own house and to have more space so that she could grow her business. And unfortunately, that wasn't within the financial means of my family. And so it was my grandparents who stepped in and gave a substantial financial gift so that my parents could afford a down payment on their house. And that house is where I grew up then, from 3rd grade onwards, and it's where my parents still live, and it's where I'm currently living with them. So their financial generosity has made a huge difference in my family's life and in my life. And then the other person who came to mind, as many of you know, I went to seminary. That's where I received my training to become a pastor. And like all higher education, seminary costs money. And I was fortunate enough to receive a number of scholarships, but there was still a difference of money that had to be made up. And that first year that I was in seminary, I took out loans to make up that difference. And then the second year, I received news that somebody who was a Lutheran in the southeastern Pennsylvania area, had heard that I was in seminary and had offered to make up the difference anonymously. And so they anonymously donated thousands of dollars towards my seminary education so that I wouldn't have any debt from the 2nd and 3rd years of seminary. And I still don't know who that person is, but quite obviously they made a huge difference in my life and in my ability to get off on the right foot once I graduated from seminary. So those are 2 examples of people who were financially generous towards me and the difference they made in my life. So I would like you to think a little bit about somebody who was financially generous towards you, whose financial generosity made a positive difference in your life. Does anybody have someone that comes to mind, a story?
I do.
Paula.
My grandfather, we grew up very, very poor, and he would drive, we had moved out of the city and into the suburbs, and he would drive 25 miles when he knew we needed Ty to do laundry or my mom needed something to feed us something good on a weekly basis.
Wow. So Paula's grandfather drove 25 miles to help provide them with basic needs when they needed to make up the difference. Laundry, detergent, food, whatever they needed. Somebody else said up here. Barb. Look, you can go to the mic.
Fabulous, and I can hear. As many of you know, some don't, our son Stephen was in a very, very bad car accident in his senior year in high school. And he was in the hospital as a quadriplegic. And everyone did so many things for us. Financial generosity, spiritual generosity. Our closet fell down, the rod fell down, and everything fell in a heap in the middle, like the first day we came home from the hospital. And the next day we came home and it was up again. And one of our friends had come to the house and put it back together again. But financially, other people gave us gift cards to eat meals and spend the night in Philadelphia. And also, the moms and all the girls, friends of Stephen's, got together and put money together and hired a cleaning woman for us. After asking it was okay if someone came in our house, but they hired a cleaning woman, and for 3 months, while Steve was in the hospital, and finally came home and is, as you've seen, healthy and well and walking and traveling the world, and he's the new dad. Those people did that so that we didn't have to worry about our home at that point in time. And they also had, not to be dead now, had mulchers and garden planters and people who came home one day to our home in a state of beauty. So it lives with me every day. It's just a wonderful experience from a terrible time. That fills my heart whenever I think about it.
Thanks for sharing, Barb. Chris?
A couple years ago, I had breast cancer, and during the 4-month period where I was going through chemo, I wasn't able to work my full hours. A man who had just come to our church within several months of my cancer gave me $5,000 to pay my bills during those couple of months, and then several months later disappeared. And he hasn't been back in 5 years. And I've been in my church for 40 years. So I still don't know to this day whether he was even a real person, one of God's angels, but it totally, it made me able to keep my home and feed my children during my cancer treatment, and it was incredible.
That is an amazing story. Thank you, Chris. Ed?
So many of you know that Linda had a really bad accident about 10 years ago. And what you might not know is she was in a wheelchair for about 6 months, so we couldn't use our house, really. She couldn't get around. So what we did is we moved to Harleysville in my daughter's house, Kim. And they took the kids' playroom, made it our bedroom, which was in the lower level of their house, which fortunately had a walk-in shower, so it was very convenient. And fortunately, Kim was home all day to help take care of them during that time. And it was certainly a blessing for us to have her and her family there during those very difficult times. So they certainly did a lot to help us during that very difficult time of trouble. But here we are today.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Ed. Karen?
Yes, a few years ago, well, my hips were bad. I was waiting to get an operation, and I ended up with blood clots in my lung and my leg. Very, very bad. And I ended up having to live with my daughter. I lived with her for 2.5 years. First floor. And she had that bedroom, and the living room changed into my bedroom. And I had the operation, and without her, I don't know what I would have done. And my church family and me some financial help and food, and just were there. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Karen. So you hear how financial generosity makes a difference. And I want you to hear also from the story what can motivate this financial generosity. So from the story that we heard from the gospel, we hear that the financial generosity, the fearless financial generosity that we provide, it mirrors the saving generosity that God gives first to us. We hear how Jesus Christ, who next week will celebrate as King, as being highly exalted and more worthy than any person here on this earth, who came to be with us as a poor carpenter, so that we might have an endless supply of grace and forgiveness and new life. And so the generosity that we give to others is both in recognition of this generosity that we first received and in thanksgiving for it, overflowing into others' lives. I want you also to hear that the fearless financial generosity that we engage in is part of building up the community. That just as we share in one another's pains and joys, so we share in one another's wealth, one another's poverty. That's part of being a community. That's what Paul means when he says the one who had much did not have too much, and the one who had little did not have too little. Part of building up a God-shaped community, which we sometimes hear called the kingdom, is this sharing with one another, so that there might be, as Paul says, a fair balance. So our fearless generosity builds up the kingdom of God. Also, fearless generosity, it's up to you. Nobody can force you or demand or command that you be financially generous. It's your choice. Nobody wants you to be unable to provide for your family. Fearless generosity shouldn't make you in unsurmountable debt. Fearless generosity should be freely given out of what you have. It's according to your needs. Each of us has a different amount. And that's why Paul says, give according to your needs, not according to what you don't have. So knowing that fearless generosity mirrors God's generosity, that it builds up our community, and that it's freely given according to what we have, what are the fears that sometimes get in the way of us being financially generous? Will I have enough if I'm financially generous? Absolutely. What other fears can get in the way of being financially generous?
Health insurance.
Health insurance. We live in that country, don't we? Absolutely. Will there be so what you're alluding to this, will there be an unexpected expense in the future? And being financially generous now will mean I won't be able to cover that expense then. Right? Yeah. What else might get in the way of us being financially generous?
Sometimes not knowing how to go about it. So if you, giving generously, anonymously is sometimes easier, but there are situations where that maybe can't be done and that fear that you don't want to insult the person that you're trying to help.
Absolutely. So like in Barb's situation, how people asked before they funded somebody to come and clean their house to make sure that she was okay with having somebody be in her house. So sometimes there's some process before that we're not quite sure how to go about doing it before we can actually do the financial generosity. Absolutely.
Will the recipient spend the money properly?
I knew it! Thank you, Rod. So this is a big one, people, and not illegitimate. So will my financial generosity be used well? Right? We want to give in a way that is helpful. I mean, the perfect example that we hear all the time is you see someone who's asking for money, and you're afraid to give to them because you're not sure how they'll use it. But this can apply to organizations too. Will the organization use my money in the spirit with which it was given? Or will it just make somebody's paycheck that much higher who's in the bureaucracy of the organization? Right?
Is your generosity when you turn around and try to invite you in the butt and something else happens? Like, let's say you need to take off from work to take someone to Philadelphia or whatever like that, or appointments and stuff. So you're now putting up your work schedule,
Mm-hmm.
losing money there so that you can do this thing for them and then the car breaks. Now you have an extra expense, a little higher.
Will your financial generosity bite you in the butt, as Tasha's poetically said? So she gave the example where, at least some unexpected expense. But it could also be that if you're not anonymously giving to somebody, that then they start to leech off of you, right? That's a fear. That's a fear. What I want to say today, these fears, they come from somewhere. They don't come from nowhere. They're things that we want to be thinking about, but they're things that we don't want to get in the way of ever being financially generous. And today specifically, we're going to talk about financial generosity towards the congregation. And I'll be honest, this congregation has not always been very good at stewarding the financial gifts that it has received. There are times when money was not used in the spirit in which it was given. There are projects which were poorly planned, where lots of money was spent, and nothing came out of it. And there were unnecessary expenses. But I want to assure you that our reform team, our financial team, our congregational council in the past year has been working really hard to eliminate unnecessary expenses, to make sure that our budget is clear and that it actually reflects what we're spending, and that it reflects our mission. And that our ministry teams have been working really hard so that our ministry reflects our mission. Making partners in the neighborhood and providing programs that meet legitimate needs in our community. So if you've been afraid or hesitant to give financially to the church, now is the time to be fearless. Now is the time to be fearless in your financial generosity. And so during worship, during the offertory time, you'll have an opportunity to consider giving a gift, a financial gift to the congregation for the coming year. And you'll be invited to step up your giving in a way that's appropriate to your context, to your financial needs. And then after worship, because we're giving thanks, you'll be given the opportunity to give thanks to God in a visual and public way. We're going to do more crafts. Pastor Pat likes to make crafts. So you'll have the opportunity to give thanks to God. And then you'll have the opportunity to speak, to take a card, to give thanks to somebody who's been financially generous to you. So all of these opportunities to engage in fearless financial generosity, knowing that the fearless financial generosity that we engage in reflects God's generosity, and that it does build up God's community, make a positive difference in the lives of our community. Amen.